Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and we've got a fun one for you. As a lot of you guys are surely familiar, we do the Union of the Unwanted once every 2 weeks or so. And you've seen many times my guest, Charlie Robinson here, of MACROAGGRESSIONS, which is an awesome name. I think it's an amazing name for a podcast. And he only weighs in a little bit, so you really got to get to the podcast. Again, the Union on the Wanted's tough because you could have 5, you could have 15, sometimes you have 20 plus people in there, and you kind of don't want to hog the space. But number one, it's long overdue for me to have Charlie on the program, but number two, he is also joining the Rockfin. I know some of you watching on Rockfin right now, and it's through alternative platforms, especially like this one, that I continue to reach people. And again, I like this platform also because it's very sports-based. You know, there's a lot of people that are seeing my stuff in the amateur and pro, wrestling world, and I'm not talking about WWE, jiu-jitsu, and of course, mixed martial arts. And I'm not trying to preach to the choir all the time, guys. I think that's really important for us to do is reach outside of those boxes. So, Charlie, why don't you tell your my audience how you got into this whole thing? You know, how long you've been doing the podcast, what motivated you to get into this, and where they can find your stuff.
Well, thanks for having me. And my background, actually, if I go back a little bit further than, about 20 years or so, my background actually is in sports. I own a company that does media training for professional athletes. So we get guys ready for the draft and get them ready for commercials, get them ready to go into broadcasting, get them ready for interviews with general managers. So the Rockfin component is kind of nice for me, even though I know you're not, we're not, it's more wrestling based and things like that. But I'm a sports guy first and foremost. And so that's my background. What wound up happening is I did that for a while. Still am a co-owner of the company, but I don't run day-to-day operations. I wound up transitioning into real estate and did that for 20 years. I still do real estate as well, but I had an awakening. I was in Las Vegas and I was selling new homes and I was doing, it was booming and everything was crazy. And I read John Perkins' book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And that changed my life because what it exposed to me was this debt-based slavery system that the IMF and World Bank were using to enslave nations like Ecuador in the book. And so as I'm reading this, I'm going, oh my God, this is so applicable to what I'm going through because I'm in Las Vegas on a much smaller scale. And we're extending, I'm selling homes and then I put the buyers in touch with the lender, our mortgage company. And these people they should have no business buying a house and yet they're getting approved. So they're like, I must be qualified. I must be approved, right? If the bank's going to give me $400,000, I must be able to afford it. And what I realized, later as the bubble burst and the banks took back tangible assets, they were running the same play the IMF and World Bank were running. And so I was already aware of 9/11 at that point, in part because of Loose Change and, in the movies that I'd been watching and the things that I'd been reading. So I wasn't totally naive to it. But I didn't understand the financial component. And that was very important to have that double whammy of John Perkins' book and then to watch it with my own eyes and then see 2 years later all the vulture funds come in through, Goldman Sachs and Chase Bank with unlimited amounts of money, just buying up, not just houses, neighborhoods. Oh, I'll take all of those. I'll take them all. They're not even looking at the price. And so I was like, good Lord, it's the biggest scam that nobody really understands. And so I felt like somebody, and I lost 2 houses in this debacle as well. So I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I felt the pain. I saw what was going on, but I still didn't really comprehend the depths of it. And then after everything, fell apart, I decided I don't ever want to get caught in the 3-card Monte game again, where I don't know how it all works. So I'm like, I just want to know how you guys are doing this. So I decided that I would learn as much as I could about the history of money, of our currency, the Federal Reserve, and where those rabbit holes lead you. So all of that culminated in 2017 with me writing a book called The Octopus of Global Control and putting that out. And from doing that, I met a lot of people in the podcasting world as I was promoting the book. One of them was Jeff Berwick. And Berwick and I got together, teamed up, and wrote a book called The Controlled Demolition of the American Empire, which we put out just a couple of weeks ago on the Friday before the elections. And on election day, that Tuesday, it became a #1 bestseller in the United States and Australia. And the irony is so heavy because if you read the book, you'll never vote again. You know what I mean? You'll see through all of it. And I was like, Jeff, this is so great that on election day of all days, it hit that mark. So what we've been doing is, I felt probably like you did when you found out about 9/11, this compulsion, this obligation to talk to people about it, to spread the word, to get information out there. Look, you don't make a lot of money selling books and podcasts. I mean, unless you're in like the top echelon. So this is not a money-making venture for me. It's an obligation. It's a duty. Jeff and I talked about when we were writing the book, we really wanted to put it out, and we were writing it and we were going to put it out. But there were some days when, it's so much work and you just think, why am I doing this? And Jeff and I kind of came to this understanding that we had a duty to put the book out. If we had this information, we compiled all of this evidence, and we have 254 footnotes throughout the book to back up what we're talking about. If we had this information and we didn't put it out, like, that would be bad on us, to not do that. So that's the mentality that we had going forward. And of course, Berwick he's a lunatic in the best possible way, But when they say things like, "Oh, you like anarchy so much, Jeff, why don't you go to Somalia?" He grabs Luke and they go to Somalia. "Oh, you talk about hyperinflation of the currency, but you've never experienced it. Why don't you go down to Venezuela and experience it?" So he gets on a plane and goes to Venezuela. So this is the type of dude I'm operating with here. He sees the world a bit differently, but that's what started me down this path. And of course, then my podcast Macroaggressions came out of that in just earlier this year in March. And it's been great. I mean, I'm probably going through the same feelings that you went through when you started with this, which is just feeling initially like, maybe I'm talking to myself, maybe I'm recording these podcasts and nobody's listening to me. And then I find out that they are, and they're listening all around the world. And then I start to feel like, okay, well, I'm building this audience. I have they're going to hold me completely accountable for the things that come out of my mouth. So I better make sure that I'm saying the right thing. So not that I would go on and just start lying to people anyway, but you feel this sort of, and once again, like a duty to put out the most accurate and and timely information that you can put out, and have interesting guests on. So that's where I came from. I came in a roundabout way from experiencing, living through, the pump and dump scheme of the late 2000s real estate bubble in Las Vegas, and watching how that impacted people's lives, like having to deal with my customers that I'd sold houses to and that had, gone through foreclosures and lost them, and
lost it all.
Me feeling responsible. It was rough. So that led me to where I am now.
So a lot of things to hit on in there. Especially when you talk about Perkins. And for those that don't know, I reference it all the time because this, was the boogeyman that intelligence sends in on behalf of the World Bank, the IMF, the interests that want to consolidate actual resources. Because at the end of the day, it's a fiat currency. And that's what you're talking about with this pump and dump scam during the housing. You'll give these people all this money, and that money will be circulated in the economy. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, they're all going to lose it. It's set up that way. And then you can buy it for pennies on the dollar. And at the end of the day, it's not money you have, it's the actual land. And we're seeing that now on a large scale with this great reset agenda. And I didn't know you were from the sports world, but listen, that's what I don't think people get. Everybody has this predisposed image of people that talk about things like this and are passionate about things like this as they're in their mother's basement, or they're just some kid. And, I got into this when I was in my, mid 20s, and I was talking about it even before. So maybe I was a kid in some respects. But the bottom line is, I like to go out and have a beer. I just called my first MMA event. March, we're calling another one 3 nights in a row. I can't wait. That's what I live for. That's why I do this stuff, is because I want that to continue. I want the boot off my neck, and this is the best way I know how to do it. And like you said, especially just starting out, even after putting out Loose Change, like, Dylan and I did Louder Than Words radio. We were like on RBN. Eventually that led me into, InfoWars and more films, but, kind of doing what I do now. But the thing is, then I think that you got less than half the production value with 5 times the staff of what I'm able to do here. Like, I've got 4 monitors in front of me. You're on this one over here. I'm watching the show here. I'm controlling it up front, and right there is Charlie's Twitter. And if you're not following him, what are you doing? Obviously, his Twitter is right underneath. And to the point where you were saying, I feel an obligation to get it right, right? I'm not this isn't talk radio anymore. And this isn't some scripted bullshit show. I'm showing you the clips. I'm showing you the bills in question. I'm showing you the protests. I'm letting you decide. I'm showing you the fine print where they're telling you, oh, by the way, this vaccine, we've never purported it to stop infection. People still, when I tell them that, they don't believe me. And I'm like, nobody said this vaccine is stopping the infection. They're like, what do you mean? I mean, they're not even saying it's going to lower the mortality rate. No studies have been done on that. They're like, Burmis, you're fucking full of shit. And I'm like, no, they're just telling you it might. And they're saying it has a 90+% efficacy of providing antibodies after the second shot. What scares me is the 1/10 of the people that aren't getting the antibodies after all of this nightmare. Like, how does that even work? So, those must be like the strongest of the strong. I would imagine those are people that are just like physically their immune system kicks shit out so quick. That's speculation, guys. That I have no idea on that. But everything else I'm saying is a fact. And that's why I think your show's important. The Union of the Unwanted. I mean, Ricky is killing it with the guests, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I shut my mouth. So, I mean, I think that's the one I least talked, and I stayed on for like 3.5, 4 hours. I cut it into 2 parts with the 2 segments of doctors because it was so important, and you do want to hear those voices. And, do you think Scott Jensen, state senator and medical practitioner for 30+ years, was just like Republican Party straight, kicked everybody else out of his office? Like, what world do these people live in? And he's sitting there, telling you how the certificates are filled out and what the real numbers are. So especially during this time period where we are seeing a consolidation of power, we are probably seeing the largest scam in our generation, if not 4 generations globally, right?
Yeah.
What do you feel your obligation is? And, have you ramped it up because of that?
Yeah. I feel that I come at this, I find this information that we're talking about to be very important and very serious, but I try to frame it in a way to point out the absurdity of it all, of the media, of the government, of big pharma. I understand they're dangerous and what they're doing is evil. And sometimes I get angry and I go sort of, get serious about that. But my overall demeanor with all of these topics, even in the books, is that if I'm talking about really heavy stuff, I feel like I need to inject my dark sense of humor into it just as a way to keep people from, jumping off the bridge, so to speak. Because when you're talking about, vaccine damage, or you're talking about satanic ritual abuse and all these things, you're just like, oh, this is so heavy. If I'm able to then throw in a jab at saying, in my first book, jokingly and probably accurately, making the assumption that Lindsey Graham owns multiple black dildos, I think that that's funny. And I think that people understand that it's a joke, right? I'm not really trying to imply that I have like the receipts from Lindsey Graham or anything like that. But it allows people to, I subscribe to the Jon Stewart way of talking about things. And in my first book, The Octopus of Global Control, I put quotes from over 500 different people that had a witnessed or had a role in some of these important events. And some of the people that I quoted in there were comedians like George Carlin and Bill Hicks and Joe Rogan. And there's a great clip I put in there from Joe Rogan talking about Jon Stewart. And I really connected with it. And he was talking about the format of The Daily Show being that Jon Stewart was making fun of these very real news events. And you could sort out what was what was real and what was him making fun of it. You didn't need, you didn't need closed captioning, or you didn't need the Wikipedia sort of warning under it or anything like that. You just needed to have your head screwed on. And so you got two things. You got information about a real news event that actually happened, and then you got a comedy show kind of making fun of that. And I'm not trying to say I'm Jon Stewart, Joe Rogan, Bill Hicks, or George Carlin, or any of those people. But I took that feeling, that philosophy of like, let's tell the real stories, but let's make them funny. Let's kind of poke fun at it so that you'll be laughing at it as you're simultaneously understanding, man, this is crazy. And some of the things that we've seen, especially over the last year, I mean, I think we have to shake our heads and just kind of laugh, because if we don't, we'll go a bit crazy. The overwhelming inconsistencies with the stories and the government saying do this, and while they're not doing it, I mean, you have to have a laugh. It's not to take away from the fact that these are very serious, components here. I'm not trying to make light of the fact that we're all cooped up in our houses and we're under insane restrictions from psychopathic governors, but we do have to laugh at how preposterous it is. And if you do that, it's also probably a little bit better for your mental health. And God knows we need that these days.
Well, I mean, that's why I moved, right? Because it was getting to me very badly in New York. Yeah. And it's still just insane there. And I think that's, the action component, because I totally agree with you. I don't want to live in a world where, even while this was going on, you know what I started rewatching? I started watching Curb Your Enthusiasm from season 1, which is, one of the funniest shows out there, bar none, hilarious. And it's because I wanted to make sure no matter what in a day, I was at least releasing those endorphins. I was laughing about something. I wasn't taking everything too seriously. But at the same time, watching, I'll tell you what, I didn't want to leave my house most of the time. Because when I'd go into an area and I'm just surrounded by zombies, it's not for me. I couldn't do it. And that's why I traveled.
I felt the same way. I felt the same way. I found myself self-isolating, not for any sort of medical reason, but just because I knew that if I put myself in a situation, going to the grocery stores, I'm asking for trouble, because I know how I am, because I know that I'm going to be a smart ass. I know that somebody's going to tell me to do something, and I'm going to tell them to fuck off. I just know that. So I remove myself from these situations so that I don't have to have my wife come bail me out of jail for something. You know what I mean? So part of this is just recognizing your own flaws, in the sense that I'm not going to, I know that these things, people always talked about getting triggered. And I even named my show Macroaggressions as a goof on those people that are like, you've committed a microaggression against me. And so I'm like, oh, you want to microaggress? Well, wait till you get my macroaggressions. I'll put you in therapy, So I have to sort of check myself too, because I know that the smartass side of me, it just takes over when I'm out in public. So I've enjoyed doing the podcast, and I like being, and I work from home anyway. I live in Denver and I work in Las Vegas. Actually, it's funny. You probably would get along really well with my business partner. He's a ex-MMA fighter. And they're my two business partners are the husband and wife team. We do Flip or Flop Vegas on HGTV. So when we renovate houses, we drag big camera crews around with us everywhere.
What MMA fighter, Charlie?
So we have I keep myself sane with the real estate stuff during my normal hours, and then I allow myself to get a little off the rails when it comes to the conspiracy world. But it's been, I didn't realize I was going to launch my podcast a week before the lockdowns kicked in. I had no idea that I was going to time it like that. So in one sense, I wound up with so much, almost too much to talk about. And so I've had to drip it out, and not just dump it all on everyone all at once. So it's been a trip. And so I'm glad to be into this alternative media world. I'm really excited to be on Rockfin. I got to thank all the people there that turned me on to it. Sam Tripoli as well as Steve Poikonen were big supporters of it. And and listen, if you're watching this on Jason's Rockfin channel, go find mine, Macroaggressions. Give me a little follow. I'm at like 45 people or something. It's kind of depressing, but I just got on a couple days ago. We'll get there. So.
Listen, what I've done with Rockfin is simply incredible. And one of the reasons I think that, number one, it's really important to be sustainable because all these other platforms want you on it. But like for YouTube, you know, I may have taken a huge vacation, which I did. I didn't post from 2012, where I had my most viral video on there, all the way up until, I think, 2018 sometime, okay? So we're talking about a 6-year hiatus. I still maintained about 5,000 subscribers when I was done, but I've had that for 13 years. And within a year, I got it up to, I want to say I hit 40,000 easy, and now I'm almost at 60,000, even with all the, you know, demonetization. I've reviewed my channel. It's never going to get reviewed. They're just looking for an excuse. I have 0 strikes. That's the thing, 2,000 videos and 0 strikes. They've never even tried to give me a strike. So, you know, I don't think they're going to be able to pull me easily. We'll see, you know, but all these other platforms, they say they have a sustainable way for you to make a living. After they cut me off on YouTube, hey, when I monetize that, that's what allows me to do this several hours a day, you know, and it's not like, you know, people think that I just throw it on and I got everything set. No, man, I'm like reading these articles. I'm going through the PDFs. I'm time coding certain things in videos. That takes, I don't have a producer. You know, no one's bringing me this stuff. You know, I go through a couple emails and DMs sometimes and pluck stuff out, but usually I'm on the news wires. I love this job. I love it. Mm-hmm. But unless I can make money doing it, I'm running a bar again. You know, or we might have to, I mean, they're probably, shout out to Tom and to Aaron, but, you know, they got 3 bars in New York. They were just opening up a 4th. You know, that who knows where they're going to be. So, yeah. God bless you guys. I feel bad because me and him were texting the other day. He knows he's getting shut down, right? So Rockfin is providing a way for me to take my core audience and instead of like one super chat for $10, which I know y'all spend all the time on different platforms, right? You get a month of all my premium content, all of Charlie's premium content, all of Steve's premium content. If you are into MMA like myself, you know, Sonnen, Fitch, I love Askren's Funky Crypto podcast. And that's the thing. As we've just put more dollars into circulation than ever for nothing, this fiat currency, if in the history of our country, they've never put more in. Crypto, which they are pushing, whether you like it or not, and PayPal is adopting, Rockfin has an actual way to convert real dollars into crypto, mine it, and it is hooked into Ethereum in the sense it is an ERC20 token. So it often moves with the price of Ethereum. Ethereum is the second largest traded crypto, only under Bitcoin. So, you know, you deal with Berwick. Is that aspect pretty exciting to you that you now have a stake in the company on top of everything?
Yeah, I like it. It's taken me a while to understand how it all works, but yeah, I like it. I like that there's look, I don't need to have the biggest audience. I just need to have the best. You know, I just want the right people that are into the content. And if you're on Rockfin and if you're there and you're there for the alternative media component of it, that's my sweet spot right there. Those are the people that I want. Those are the people that I want that are paying to be on the site and already. I like the way the crypto is working into it. I've been a speaker at an Acapulco the last 2 years, which is Jeff's anarchist convention in Acapulco, Mexico. And there's a crypto component to it as well. And so this is a world I didn't know anything about. And so I've been able to get to know those guys and watch their videos and watch their live presentations and things like that and get an education. And of course, hanging out with Berwick, you learn a little bit about it as well. But the marriage of, you know, a platform with crypto, removing the censorship component of it, giving people a place to feel like they can safely start to invest in their channel. Because what's the point? What's the point if we're going to all just be, you know, I've got a YouTube channel as well. I know it'll go away at some point. I don't have a big audience there, but I know it'll go away at some point. So where's the motivation for me to invest my time and energy to grow that channel when I know that as it gets high enough, they just snip it right off and they just go goodbye. So I'll do that for Rockfin. I'll do that for Rockfin for sure. I will build that out. I will feel comfortable doing that. But that's because there's protections in place. That's because they have a philosophy that doesn't incentivize authoritarianism and things like that. So it depends on the marketplace. It goes back to what YouTube used to be, which is it depends on the viewers. The viewers drive the content. If you want to watch something, you're going to go there and seek it out and find and promote that and make it popular. This is what I need. I need people that are there exclusively looking for the topics that I'm talking about and things like that. I think I might have found the right home. So I'm excited to be here. And of course I'll still, my podcast goes out over Apple and Spotify and iHeartRadio, and I'm on David Icke's video platform, Iconic. I have a channel there. So, I'm spreading myself out and diversifying as best as I can because of the things I'm writing about and because of the things that I'm witnessing with my own eyes, which is people that have invested years into their channels only to watch them, to wake up one morning and it's all gone. And that feeling that you get. I've been suspended from Facebook 4 times. I've been literally kicked off of Twitter. They canceled my account in February. Now I'm back. But they don't know that.
Yeah.
So I mean, we can play these games if we want to, but they get really old. But to have a home where is protected, I feel very comfortable, and I'm really glad that I'm here.
Well, what I like about it is not only does it drive the traffic like the old school YouTube used to, right? Number 2, it's selective. So not everybody can just become a creator. It's not going to be saturated with cat videos. You know what you're getting when you're getting into it. I like that Martin Floriani is the guy behind it, Flow Sports. There's a guy, I know you're in the sports world, that built a huge niche web platform. Okay. And almost like a Netflix for creators in this one, that was a pay-per-view option for people. Flow Sports is still out there. Fight TV is out there, but it was among that level, which is great. So you have the Netflix for creators aspect for those that pay. Anybody can put anything not behind a paywall. They now have just added a tipping aspect, which is, competitive with the super chats. And then for people like Whitney Webb, that may not want to podcast every time, that may not want to do video every time, they can still create a stack with no limitations of characters with their articles as well. So in that sense, it's a really creative platform that, they kind of got the tiger by the tail, where they know they're not going to get a bunch of pirated content because they're not letting everybody on there. Smart. I think a lot of alternative platforms are there. 2, we're live streaming. Not every alternative path. BitChute's great. I like the guys at BitChute. I talked to them behind the scenes. I did Goodman's show years ago as well when he was doing that. But they don't live stream. We'd be live streaming a BitChute right now if they just integrated that. And I believe if Rockfin can do the next big thing and get it so you can live stream from one of the Magic devices, and I can be in DC and stream from there, that's where I'm streaming to, because I know there's no chance that gets taken down. And if I want to post it to YouTube later, great, but you'll know where to get it. And I I could even have 2 phones going. So it wouldn't even, what I'm saying? I think that that's a huge component, especially in the technology aspect. And I think that especially now, when I think the next big thing is going to be, depending on where we are in January, YouTube taking live streams down of certain demonstrations and certain political actions. I think that's the next step, because they've already censored doctors. I'd be happy to be wrong about that. But when we talk about censorship, geez, you were doing those Union of the Unwanted podcasts with me all the way back in March. I'd say other than the military response, I was pretty spot on. And I'm pretty happy that we didn't get to the military response. But everything else, from New York being the worst place to be and the highest infection and death rates, to the fact that we had food shortages and lines, to the fact that it is a consolidation of power and all these billionaires are making more monies, and that the solution was way worse than the problem, and that here we are more than 6 months later. I was like, they're saying 6 months minimum, and here we are 8+ months later. I mean, what are your thoughts on all that? Is that the next thing? Are they going to stop the streams of political protests now?
I'll tell you, it stands to reason that they will, because if Rockfin ever winds up getting invited to become a part of the Council on Foreign Relations, then I'll have a problem. Then I'll be concerned. But in the absence of that, I'm gonna say that the Facebooks, Twitters, YouTube / Google of the world, they are taking orders from people above them. That's coming from the Council on Foreign Relations. It's coming from the Atlantic Council. It's coming from the German Marshall Fund or the Poynter Institute. They're being told what to do, who to censor, and how to do it. It's the only explanation for Alex Jones disappearing simultaneously all at once. It's a coordinated effort. They can say that it's not. They can say it's terms of services and hide behind that nonsense. But we know what this is. This is orchestrated to control the political discourse in this country and also in the world. Of course, they'll take down live streams. There's no reason why they'll allow something like that to go on. They're narrative builders, and if that is creating a narrative that doesn't, it's incongruent with the establishment narrative, then it will go away. It's as simple as just making the decision that happens, and we've seen it. We've seen this. When they put out information, when David Brock at Media Matters does in 2017 puts out a document where he's searching for funding from additional investors, and he says, listen, we've got this plan to take back the next year's or the election in 2020. It's in what does victory look like was the question in it. It says his answer was, it looks like anytime our president goes on television or we hit him as hard as we can. We go after anybody associating with him. We try to discredit them. And you're reading this going, okay, fine, yeah, whatever. Maybe they'll do it. Maybe they won't. But then you get to the point where it says, we have the agreements of Google, Twitter, and Facebook to help us with this. They have agreed and they are on board with this project. And you're like, hang on a second. This document probably isn't meant for public viewing. Maybe David Brock didn't want to let the cat out of the bag to everybody, that they have an agreement, that Media Matters has an agreement to censor anything on the right, anything right of them, which is center and right. But so these social media companies and these platforms are involved in this. People can pretend like they're not, or they can pretend that Jack Dorsey just had a bad day and, oh, it was a mistake that we censored, the New York Post for running the Hunter Biden. Yeah, that must have been a mistake. It's not a mistake. It's coordinated. It's baked into the equation. It's the reason why these platforms exist in the first place, to control the narrative. We think that they're open and free and honest and everybody can come on and say whatever they want. That is not the case. Maybe it was at one point to get the critical mass in there, but they've locked the doors to the party and they've started throwing people out. We've watched what happened. Anybody on the right? I'm not on the right either. I'm just in the stands throwing rocks at both of these people.
Let's stop for a second, because it's not just on the right. For instance, they fact checked that woman who is a nurse and passed out on live television. I didn't even play that on my show. Not only because, number one, I thought that maybe it was going to get some kind of fact check under it if I did play it on my show, but number two, because the last time I played something that went viral, that woman complaining about the Hollywood set, somebody had tried to copyright it as music so they could take all these YouTubers' funds that they knew would post it and make comments on it. And that's the new thing of censorship, is that people claim false copyright over stuff on purpose, and they claim it's music, and they just know most creators won't even see it. So it's craziness out there. When you look at the censorship, right, and the way they're doing, you just mentioned Media Matters, David Brock. I just want to say this. The fact check on this woman, first before we get to David Brock, is that somehow she faints when she gets needles sometimes, or that when she stubs her toe. So you're telling me they put a nurse on national television that has a history of fainting. Okay, whatever. There was nothing in the headline for a fact check. That's not Republican or Democrat. Now we get to Media Matters. And for those that don't know, David Brock is this political operative. He doesn't believe in either side. I want to make that very, very clear. He started as a Republican. In fact, his claim to fame back in the day is he wrote a book that he went on a blind date with Matt Drudge. All the way back in the day. And then he ends up flipping over to the Clinton side. Now, many of you maybe know him not only for Media Matters because he dated James Alefantis. Now, the thing is, in 2012, I accidentally tweeted about Alefantis because I was tweeting about Brock, because they were together at the time and there was some lawsuit going on where I believe Brock was named, where one of Alefantis' ex-boyfriends was suing him, and it was like a really messy thing. It wasn't really clear what exactly he was threatening him with. I wonder what it could be.
Right.
I wonder what it could be, guys. But, Brock, I mean, Brock's the kind of guy that literally goes by that occultic, satanic, Crowleyan message of do as thou wilt. And he is put in charge of media matters. And guys, that's not an exaggeration. This guy doesn't give a fuck what side he plays. He cares about power and influence, and he's shown that over the last 30 plus years. So when you're dealing with guys like Brock, and some people will call him a minion of Soros, that's just because fucking Soros pays his checks. He was a minion of whoever was willing to write those checks. I want to make that very clear. How do you get that across to people when they've cloaked themselves in this guise of righteousness and goodness, and they're like, media matters, we're going to tell the truth, and they have no idea there's a literal human demon behind that organization?
It's funny. Well, I mean, listen, if your boyfriend's James Alphonsus, who runs, a particular restaurant, you just show him that and you go, this is, you're known by the company that you keep. Okay, well, let's look who the company is that David Brock keeps, and his relationship with the Clintons and Hillary Clinton and being a bundler for them and all the things that he did. But you're right, he doesn't have any loyalty to her except to the extent that he believes she was going to become president. So therefore you want to be friends with the person that's going to be president. But this guy, he's not some altruistic guy who's just got these really strong feelings. He believes deeply in the Democratic Party. He believes in the party that will give him, like you said, that'll give him power and put him in a position to get more of what he wants. I mean, how is your boyfriend winding up? How is he the number 49 most powerful person in Washington, D.C. just by owning a pizza restaurant?
In D.C. People don't get it. All right, guys, I know that on the television, you see maybe you took a trip out there when you were a kid and you went out to some museums. DC, I was staying in the heart of DC, last week. I was at the Hampton Inn. World Bank, IMF buildings, Georgetown, they're all there. They're all there. Yeah. Every globalist influence has a 5 to 10 story office building there in DC. So if you own a fucking pizza shop and somehow you make the top 50 of most influential people in D.C., where Congress and Senate meet and the president lives, maybe you should be asking yourself who this guy really is. I want to end it on that subject, just because
that's all I ever say.
Yeah, you could get as wild as you want to get, but I'm just saying to you, just think to yourself, just take a stroll outside of the museums and the historical stuff, and you'll be like, holy shit, this is like the power center of the country. Manhattan's a different kind of feel because the buildings are bigger, the boroughs are bigger, it's more spread out, there's different things going on. But in DC, everything is really hardcore in a 2 to 5 mile radius, and especially a 1 mile radius. Charlie, it goes beyond the pale to think somebody like that could be in the top 1,000 most influential people. But I digress.
Of course.
When can people find the podcast? What are some of the guests coming up? How can they get your book?
Yeah, the podcast is available Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Iconic, and Rockfin, and YouTube too. Till YouTube tells me to go away. Well, we just had David Icke on the show since I'm on Iconic. I've got Jimmy Jean is on. He'll be on his episode will hit tomorrow. I've got Helen Biniski, who's Helen of Destroy. She'll be on the next week. So I do 2 episodes a week. One's a monologue. One is an interview with people, and we just go wherever the conversation takes us. We try and focus on current events and things like that. People are interested in the book. It's available on Amazon. The Octopus of Global Control is the first book. The Controlled Demolition of the American Empire is the second book. And of course, we're doing Union of the Unwanted shows. This is a group podcast that you are a staple member of. We've been doing this for, I think, 15 episodes now. We finally broke out, created our own YouTube channel for it. We have our own RSS feed. So if you're into downloading podcasts, take a look at that. We do it twice a month. It's a group show, constantly changing members, except for a couple couple core people there, and we try and bring in do interviews with experts on particular topic, and then bring in other content creators, and we get to the bottom of things. We had a great show that, a couple of weeks ago when we had Jaime, head of product for Rockfin. We had Jeremy, CEO of Library, and we had Aaron, co-founder of Float, on all of these alternative platforms. And then surrounding that are all of us content creators that are asking them the questions that, hey, this is what we're seeing. This is what we need. Are you able to do that? Yes, we're able to do it. Or no, we do something differently. And what was fascinating about that conversation, I think you probably would agree, was that midway through the conversation, you've got Library, Float, and Rockfin people all talking to each other about how they can work together. We were like, whoa, that would never happen anywhere else. I mean, it wouldn't happen with, you'd have Twitter being like protective of their stuff. Don't look at my stuff. But to have these different platforms going, oh, that's cool. We could do that. Yeah, we should work on that. Let's talk after the show. And we're like, this is why we're doing it. This is why we're putting these together, to have the conversation, to get people thinking about it, get these, whether it's last week when we did it with all the doctors on that were talking about the vaccines, or we're talking about, content creators and these new platforms that are out there that are available. It's just a great way to get a bunch of people together and have this conversation. We do it on Monday nights, twice a month. And so if people are interested, they can check that out as well. You can follow us on Twitter too. Union, I think it's like the abbreviation for Union of the Unwanted, the acronym for it.
I mean, again, Rockfin, guys, he was talking about those interviews with the doctors. Too spicy for YouTube. I wasn't going to put either of them on there. I wasn't going to go for any kind of a strike. No. So they're still here free. I'll be taking them off for free and going into the archives after the weekend. So what better times would at least make that free account, follow myself, get myself to 9,000. And that's awesome, guys. Again, just to be able to convert 1/10 of my audience is amazing. And this is now almost, a fifth of my audience that's now converted over. It might actually be a fifth. So, which is awesome. Yeah, it's about a fifth of my audience over there. So, guys, thank you so much. Make sure that you're following Charlie. Again, if you subscribe to Charlie, you get all my content. $9.99 a month. You can't beat it. In fact, Christina, I'm not going to say her last name, but you subscribed while watching this interview over on Rockfin. Another really cool thing. I get texts while this stuff happens. So, guys, I love you. Thank you for joining me. Charlie, thank you so much. And by the way, I was an asshole. I forgot Charlie. I was supposed to have him on at noon. I got wrapped up, and he was good enough to go on the fly really 10 minutes before this. So, Charlie, thank you so much, brother, and we'll have to do it again soon.
Thanks for having me, Jason. I appreciate it. Anytime.
Okay, you rock, my man. So that was a really, really fun interview, guys. Again, go check out MACROAGGRESSIONS. He's a really funny guy, and he's smart. And like I said, we're not trying to preach to the choir here. That's how we do things. $5, $10, $15, it means the world to me. Big donors, couldn't do it without you. You know about the Rockfin. Make sure you're making the Rockfin account. Rockfin, live. Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. exclusives. Get over there. A lot of exclusives over there you're not going to see. Like I said, those doctors exclusives, that's 2.5 hours of content. If you haven't made if you want to learn about the vaccine and the side effects, if you want to learn how the numbers work, those are 2 very important videos. Thumbs this up. Only you had 119 thumbs on a really good conversation. So thumbs it up on the way up. Thanks for joining me, guys. I love you. Check out all the documentary films. They're free. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, and New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture. What's going on with my internet? That's so weird. Why does my internet feel like it's capped all of a sudden? So bizarre. We're going to have to restart. Maybe that's why Charlie wasn't coming in great. Anyway, guys, we're doing it, and we're doing it big. I love you, and I'll see you all on the flip.